Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here. Going to get into a couple of news items, but the primary focus of this episode, I've been racking and stacking position groups across the NFC West: quarterbacks, tight ends, inside linebackers, safeties, interior defensive line, guards, centers, and so on. And I hadn't done the wide receivers yet. And now's a good time to dive into that. And there are some good ones in the NFC West. We will rack and stack the position groups and even individually who are the best receivers in the NFC West. Before we get to that, it is episode 777 on the podcast. Hard to believe. And who wore number 77 for the Rams? Well, we talked about Gary Jeter 100, 200 episodes ago. This episode, let's talk about number 77 offensive tackle Jake Long. And he was the answer to a quiz I had on the YouTube channel several days ago, by the way. 6'7", 315-pound tackle. Came out of Michigan, the first overall pick in the 2008 draft by the Dolphins. Spent 5 years with Miami. And then the Rams brought him on, 2 years with the Rams. And, we thought that was going to be a big deal for our Rams. This is that period where they were not very good. Didn't really work out, though. Certainly, not that he didn't play well, but he just wasn't the answer. Wasn't we needed a lot more than Jake Long to get those teams straightened out. But one of the better offensive tackles of his generation, Jake Long, number 77. Hey, now I was checking in on the odds to win the NFC West, and it is still the 49ers that are favored. And I saw this across several sites, and RotoWire translated it into the percentage odds to win the division based on the odds that are being posted right now on various sites. And basically, the 49ers a 36.8% chance of winning the division, the Rams 31.2%, and then the Cardinals and the Seahawks both at 16%. Now, there's a couple of takeaways here. The first takeaway is, two things to consider, I should say. One is the 49ers are going to get more love than they deserve typically. Steelers, Cowboys, Packers, 49ers, they're generally going to get more love by the experts and the public. And the odds makers know that, so the odds may be tilted towards the 49ers a little bit. And they also have that easy schedule. So I don't think this is necessarily saying that the 49ers are the better team. I think most assessments would be that the Rams roster from top to bottom is a little more solid. But, those three games, the Rams playing first place teams, I should say, and the 49ers playing last place teams, I think that's enough. That and the fact that they are the 49ers, a very popular franchise. It is what it is, and the 49ers still, a lot of folks seeing them as the likely winners of the NFC West. Not that it's a big difference, about 5.6 percentage point difference between the 49ers and the Rams. And it's understandable given, the Rams playing the Eagles, Ravens, and Lions, and the 49ers playing those last place teams in the same division. So that's the current odds, and I haven't seen much change in this. I thought maybe it would start tilting towards the Rams a little bit more, but that has not happened. I think making a bet on the Rams might not be a bad play at this point. So let's get into these wide receivers. We'll talk about the Cardinals wide receivers, and I see their top three guys as being Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, and Zay Jones. Harrison, the first reaction we're going to have is he is a disappointment given his draft position, but he had a decent year. He's a 6'3", 209-pound wide receiver, 62 catches for 885 yards and 8 TDs. That's really not that bad for a rookie. And supposedly he's been putting on some muscle. Not sure if that's going to translate into even more production. We'll see. But of those 885 yards, keep in mind 226 of them came against the Rams. So sorry to say, he was one of the guys that, early in the year it was wide receivers torching us, and then later in the year it was Barkley But Harrison, solid wide receiver, and Michael Wilson, the number 2 guy, 6'2", 210 pounds in that range. He had 85 catches in his 2 years, 85 catches for over 1,000 yards and 7 TDs. So he's a solid number 2. You might see him more of a possession, a tough receiver, making the tough catches over the middle, that type of thing. Never really going to light it up or, going to stretch the field for you, but solid number 2. And then there's Zay Jones, 6'2", 200 pounds. He was a first-team All-American out of East Carolina. This is his 9th year in the league. He's been with the Bills, the Raiders, the Jags. This is his 2nd year with the Cardinals. And interestingly, in 2023, Jones was, last year, in August of last year, he was suspended and only appeared in 11 games. This is last year, right? Finished the year with 8 receptions for 84 yards. And then the Cardinals re-upped, which surprises me. March, they gave him another contract, a $4.4 million contract. Despite the suspension and the limited production. But he's an experienced receiver, another bigger receiver, 6'2", 200 pounds. A lot of these guys, Seahawks, Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, you're going to hear a lot of 6'1", 203 type size wide receivers with one very big exception, and you probably know who that is. So the Cardinals wide receiver group, it really depends on Harrison. He's the key here for them. In Seattle, JSN has emerged as one of the better receivers in the league, 6 feet, 197 pounds, just another one in a long line of Ohio State wide receivers, Marvin Harrison being another one. So he, in his 2 years in the league, 1,758 yards and 10 TDs. And the big thing about him is he has not missed a game. Played in all 17 games in both seasons. So in his 34 games, 1,700 yards plus. For comparison, Puka Nacua, drafted in the same year as him, as was Michael Wilson, by the way. Nacua, 28 games. So 6 less games, has 2,476 yards and 9 TDs. So just an interesting comparison. We'll talk about the Rams receivers here in a second. But 2 2023 draft picks, one in the first round, one in the 5th round. Who is better? Who would you rather have? We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then, of course, they have Cooper Kupp. How much do I have to talk about him? Not a whole lot. The question with him is, has he lost a step? Has he lost a step, or is he just banged up last year? Is he going to be able to come out of the gate like the old Cooper Kupp? And if he does, can he maintain that? Is he going to hang in there and be able to produce all year long without getting banged up? Because much like Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp just cannot stay healthy, missing a lot of games over the course of his career. And then there's Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's been around a little bit too, a lot like Zay Jones. He's been with the Packers, Chiefs, Bills, and Saints. Now, he was with the Bills, and they released him when they made that deal for Amari Cooper. So he goes over to the Saints, and, not a lot of production there. What did he finish there with? I think it was 19 receptions over the 14 games last year that he played between the two teams. So, he's a veteran guy, a known quantity, not a lot to be excited about there as far as I'm concerned as the number 3 guy. They also got Jake Bobo. But Scantling, if nothing else, he's a guy with some experience at the position, that's for sure. Between him and Kupp, you could, 2 seasoned veterans there going to work for the Seahawks. And then there is the 49ers, and this one is, some question marks here. Brandon Ayuk, 6 feet, 200 pounds, signed that big $120 million contract, and then, gets hurt in that game against the Cardinals and misses the rest of the year. He'll be back in week 4 or 5. Now he's extremely productive. 7 games last year, 25 catches, 374 yards, but the previous 2 seasons, broke the 1,000 yard mark barrier both seasons. So he's a solid guy. It's just a matter of when he's healthy and if he comes back, is he going to be 100%? Because it was a serious injury, tore his ACL and MCL, and sometimes it takes an extra year to get back to 100%. So there's a big question mark there for the 49ers, obviously. And then there's Jauan Jennings, 6'3", 212 pounds, a 7th-round pick out of Tennessee. So the 49ers have busted a lot of picks, but this was a solid one. 4 years of the 49ers. Last year was a bit of a breakout year for him. 77 catches for 970 yards and 60 Ds, basically doubling his best previous season. And, he did a lot of damage against our Rams, too. He had that big game against the Rams where we came back and won. So kind of a sad day for Jauan Jennings, not being able to pick up a W. His team unable to pick up a W in just a fantastic game that he had against us. And then there's Ricky Pearsall, another guy that's a bit of a question mark, 6'3", 189. He had that unfortunate incident that delayed the start of his season, but he ended up playing in 11 games, 31 receptions for 400 yards and 3 TDs. And coming back from that shooting, you can't be too disappointed. Brent Jones, the former 49er, comparing him to Puka Nacua, and also comparing him to himself, saying that his rookie year was delayed due to a car accident, Ricky Pearsall due to a shooting. And, there's high hopes for Pearsall, but we have to see more. I think he's going to be a solid receiver. It's just a matter of, how high that bar is going to be for him. So they got some question marks there. It's interesting that Jennings is probably the surest thing at this point. Ayuk coming back from the injury, and Pearsall, a second-year guy, just need to see more of him, but I think he's going to be good. And then we get to our Rams, Puka Nacua. I already talked about it, the stats over his 2 seasons, 2,400 yards, but has missed some games. And then Davante Adams, over 1,000 yards last year, and he's pretty consistently around 1,000 yards since his 2016 season. He had 2 seasons where he finished with 997 yards, another season where he was at 885, I think. Other than that, just 1,000 plus. So we have not seen a drop off from Davante Adams. And then there's Tutu Atwell. Been talking about all these 6'1", 6'2", 205-pound wide receivers. Then there's Tutu, by far the smallest wide receiver we're talking about here. 5'9", 165. He had 42 catches for 562 yards last year. And the thing about Tutu, very productive when you look at his production versus targets. I'm going to venture to guess might be number one among all these wide receivers. He didn't get a lot of opportunities, and he made the most of them. And I think he's going to get a lot more this year. So Tutu Atwell, all systems go. High hopes for him. And if he's your number 3 guy, feel pretty good about that. And number 1 and 2, as solid as it gets. And let's rack and stack these wide receivers, shall we? In the NFC West, I kind of copped out here. I'm calling Puka, JSN, and Davante 1A, 1B, and 1C. And I don't even mean Puka's necessarily ahead of JSN and Davante. Pick your order. If you look at it from, who would I want over the next 5-10 years? It might be JSN. Who would I want this season? It might be Puka. Barring injury, just gets banged up so much. And then Davante Adams, in his prime, better than both of them, obviously. But I think that's a fair assessment. But these guys, 1, 2, 3, pick your order. Then after that, Brandon Ayuk. Now, before last season, I would have had him as 1D probably, but coming back from the injury, going to pump the brakes on that a little bit. Then there's Marvin Harrison. He could end up being a 1D by the end of this season. He could be 1D within a few weeks. He obviously has a potential, just needs to string together, a bunch of games in a row where he, prove that he is the real deal, an elite wide receiver in the NFL. My 6th wide receiver in the division is Cooper Kupp. And I hate saying it, but I think that's about where he belongs. He could go up, he could go down, just a matter of his health. And if he's able to, come off the ball and, get in and out of his breaks like the old Cooper Cup, that's what it's about. And I have Juwan Jennings as number 7 and Michael Wilson at number 8. And then there's some other guys, Ricky Pearsall, Tutu Atwell, a bunch of other guys kind of right behind this group. I might put Atwell at number 9, but leaning towards the Rams, and so I won't even touch that. All these other guys are just outside the top 8 and lurking, and maybe one of them will really surprise us. So, how do I feel about this team by team? And I'm going to go back to my Siskel and Ebert rankings. I'm giving the Rams 4 out of 5 stars. When you look at the top 4 guys, Nakua, Adams, Atwell, and let's say Jordan Whittington. I think Whittington could be a surprise factor here. And I think Whittington is definitely going to be I'm tempted to say an exceptional wide receiver. We got to pump the brakes on that a little bit, but he's going to be pretty darn good, I think. And they're going to use him in different ways, and he'll be involved in the return game, and maybe more so on special teams than getting a bunch of offensive snaps, especially if the Rams are going 12 personnel as much as we think they are. That's going to reduce the number of snaps, the opportunities for Whittington, but 4.5 stars based on Nakua and Adams being a 1-2 punch there. The Seahawks, I'm giving them 4 out of 5 stars, leaning heavily on JSN, and with the hope that Kupp is something close to his old self. And then, Scantling and Bobo. But it's really about JSN there. Hard to give this wide receiver group less than 4 stars with JSN leading the way. And the 49ers, I originally went with 3 stars, but I'm going 3.5 because we're going to have to give Ayuk the benefit of the doubt that he's going to be something close to his old self. And Juwan Jennings, underrated wide receiver, a lot of upside for Ricky Pearsall. And then Demarcus Robinson, didn't mention him earlier. He's facing a suspension, and, he might be the 9th best receiver in this division, if not even higher. Assuming he gets out of that suspension and gets some snaps, he could supplant Juwan Jennings as the number 2 or 3 guy. I don't know how to rack and stack the 49er depth chart here. Right now, you assume it's going to be Ayuk, Jennings, and Pearsall, but Demarcus Robinson might eventually have something to say about that. And then the Cardinals, I give them 3 stars. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. Marvin Harrison, he could be the next JSN, and if he kind of explodes onto the scene this year and shows the best side of Harrison that we saw last year, then this immediately elevates the Cardinals into a 3.5 star area. But I'm just not super excited about Wilson, Jones, and Greg Dortch as their other receiver. Just, they're okay, but just, if you can take away Marvin Harrison, as if that's part of your game plan, and Kyler Murray is looking at Michael Wilson and Zay Jones and Greg Dortch, that doesn't strike fear into me. As a defensive coordinator, I think most defenses will be not too concerned about the passing attack aside from Marvin Harrison. So that's where the 3 stars came from. So that is my assessment of the wide receiver groups in the NFC West. Rams clearly at the top. Seahawks close behind with an opportunity. If Kupp is the old Cooper Kupp, they're going to be a 4.5 star wide receiver group. And the 49ers, a bit of a mess in that, they could end up being good. I just don't know what to do with them right now with the injury and the suspension and Pearsall. We don't know what we have quite yet. And then the Cardinals, after Marvin Harrison, nothing that really scares me. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll get to some other, what do we have left? I don't think we've done edge rushers yet. And our next episode, we're going to have another friend of the show back and get his perspective on just about anything having to do with the Rams. Try to keep it interesting out here from Rams Up.